So good.
Okay, you'll do it again now.
I'll just do it again right now. Ready? Watch this. It's only going to be even better. Hello, fellow Kingdom Hearts fans, and maybe even a few curious Talisman fans. My name is Brody, and welcome to my Kingdom Hearts Talisman Dusk to Dawn showcase video. So I'm a huge nerd, as you've probably guessed from the content of this video, and I enjoy making things, primarily games and worlds. However, I did spend the last year converting this bus into a tiny home for me and my partner to live in. And if you've spotted that Riku statue in the background and are wondering if I measured it specifically and built the entire box shelves around fitting it and my other favourite knickknacks, you would be bang on the money, my friend. But I'm not here today to talk about the bus. I just thought it would be kind of weird to do a board game showcase inside a bus and not talk about it like it was some totally normal thing to do. But if any of you are interested in that project, you can check out our Instagram. It's The Road to Dawn, and I think a few of you may appreciate that reference. Anyway, over the past few years, I've been working on a number of creative projects. A video game, a totally new board game, a novel series. However, go back just a couple of years and I had never worked on any creative projects. No art, no music, no stories, nothing. I just thought I wasn't a creative person. So what triggered this major creative undertaking that I've begun? Well, it all started with a little game called Kingdom Hearts Talisman. Now sit with me as I tell you a little story. Me and my friends sat down to play this game having no idea what we were in for. And we all had the best time. Having a multiplayer Kingdom Hearts experience to play with each other and all the shenanigans that ensued was amazing. But as we sat down and played it again, cracks began to emerge. And you may be familiar, if you've played this game before, with what those cracks were. From small things like the ribbon being the worst offensive item and the protect chain being the best. Though, to be fair, that one's kind of unsquare. What do they think people were going to assume is better? But bigger things, like no combat and very little player interaction throughout the game. There's no end game catch-up mechanic to make the end game more exciting. The balance of characters was way off. Some characters just would never be picked over other much more powerful players. Along with the applicability of some of the character perks, didn't really match the characters very well. I found it seemed to be a bit of a missed opportunity. It seemed to be rushed out and done by somebody who didn't really know Kingdom Hearts very well. So I saw this as an opportunity for myself. I thought I could try and build something better, something that captures the magic of the Kingdom Hearts world a little bit more. Bring in a more exciting ending, maybe multiple endings. Bring in things like coliseum events and ultimate items and okay, well now it's starting to get a little bit more complex. Okay, let's break it into game modes so there's more digestible and it's not too overwhelming at any one time. Co-op mechanics, survival mechanics. And before I knew it, I'd bitten off way more than I could chew, and I was having the best time ever. Wake up every day excited, be working out mechanics, listening to Pokemon music all day, going to bed thinking about balance changes and new things that I could experiment and play with, mucking around with card building. It was amazing. In the end, I'd spent over 200 hours working on this game, and today it is my pleasure to bring to you the Kingdom Hearts Dusk to Dawn expansion. Okay, so before we get into things, I want to go over a few caveats. Firstly, this is not a simple board game. If you haven't played the base Kingdom Hearts Talisman or a Talisman game before, I strongly suggest you play it first to get up to speed on the base mechanics before jumping into everything that this expansion brings. Next up, this is not a quick project. You're not going to knock it out in 1 or 2 hours, I'm sorry to say. You are going to be spending a whole weekend on this project to get it built. Finally, you have to have the base game. The expansion brings in new cards and new mechanics that work off the core that is Kingdom Hearts Talisman, and it won't work without it. But once it's done, it will be worth it. The experience of having a fun Kingdom Hearts game that really captures the magic of the Kingdom Hearts franchise, with your friends mucking around, taking them out, stealing their stuff, it is a lot of fun, and it's definitely worth the effort. So next what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and set this up so I can go through all of the key changes and updates. And then at the end, we're going to go through how you can make this yourself, along with all the things that I've learned through the process to make it a little bit easier. So I'll jump in, build this now, and then we can get into all the changes. If you watch this very closely, you'll see Zoe going over and fixing my shoddy work. Eventually, I learnt my lesson and stood aside and let her take over. And here we are with everything set up. Now, there are an absolutely insane number of changes in this expansion, from things like new ultimate objects that you can synthesize or get as part of a quest, to coliseum events, and a lot of different character changes, giving them allegiances or perks that better fit the character, or perks that make them fit a game archetype. Like Goofy is a guardian tank who can help defend his allies from damage, or you've got Terra and Vanitas, who are PvP combat-oriented heroes, or Aqua, who's a boss-ass mage healer, or Kairi. Well, Kairi's still Kairi, but she's kind of cool. And look, I'm not going to go through all of the changes. That would be crazy. But I'll throw up a list on screen now for you to see all of the changes that have been added in this expansion. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the mechanics. So we'll go through some of the biggest changes that have been added so you can understand what your experience is going to be like when playing this mod. So, firstly, let's jump into the allegiance mechanics. So now all characters have either a light, dark, or neutral allegiance, and on their bases you can see they're actually colored with their new allegiance. And basically, different spaces or cards will affect different allegiances differently. And it also gives you access to a different ultimate item and can determine in team-based modes who your allies and who your enemies are. The next one is Trinities. Me and my friends found that Trinities never occurred. There was never 3 of us on one space when we happened to draw a Trinity, and then we got to trigger its effect. So we ended up changing that. Now, if you land on an ally's space, you basically roll a die and you have a 1 in 3 chance to trigger the Trinity instead, so that it'll actually happen in your playthroughs. PvP has now been added, so you can fight your friends. So if you land on them, you can encounter them, and the combat works just like normal combat against Heartless. So you'll add your stat and a die roll to see who wins. You can cast magic to shake things up. And if you win, you can deal a heart of damage to your opponent, along with steal either 2 money, or their favorite follower, or an object. So it's well worth the risk of taking on another player. Synthesis. So now certain enemies have a chance to drop a synthesis item, which you can then collect. Once you build up enough, you can go to a shop to get some pretty incredible items. Some of the best items are locked behind synthesis only. So it's definitely worth going through and hunting down those Heartless. Then we've got Coliseum events. So Coliseum events are a pretty major change and one that I like a lot. You can go onto Olympus Coliseum and you can release mid-game bosses. So from things like the Behemoth stomping around and doing damage to everyone around it, or the Titans wandering around to the corners and setting out titanic pulses that you need to try and run away from, or Sephiroth hunting you down at terrifying speeds as he chases all the players trying to defeat everyone on the board. Now, while terrifying, you can get some amazing rewards from defeating them, so it's definitely worth actually releasing them. It can make the board more dangerous for your enemies, or they can give you amazing loot. Next up, we've got some follower upgrades. So now all of the followers in the game, they have a little quest that you can complete to upgrade that follower, or there's a couple of cards and spaces on the board that can upgrade them. It gives them a new ability and they can no longer be stolen, so it's definitely worthwhile. The next one is game speed manipulations. Now, if you are familiar with Talisman, you know that it's a long game. It can go for like 5 hours. And not everybody's got that kind of time with their friends to spend that. So I've put in game speed manipulations to allow you to change your game length up from anywhere from like an hour quick game all the way through to the 5-hour extensive Talisman experience if you're crazy like that. Then we've got game modes. So game modes, they change things up probably the most. They'll completely change how things play. So the first game mode is Race, and it tries to remain quite true to the original Talisman experience. So the original Kingdom Hearts Talisman experience. So you'll go through, it still has our new PvP and synthesis mechanics, but at the end you just tally up points like in the original version. Next up is Survival, and Survival tries to remain more true to original Talisman, not Kingdom Hearts Talisman. So it's a last person standing. The idea is to rain chaos, fight your friends, to release Coliseum events, to make the board more dangerous, or get yourself some loot to take out your enemies, and get to the end so that you can start dealing a heart of damage to all the other players and be the last one alive. Then we've got teams. So you can have both of those modes, the race mode or the survival mode, in teams. And you can also include having like an endgame boss, so like Master Ericus, Xehanort, and Yen Sid. And you can do them in allegiances or just pick your own teams, and it just changes it up so that you can be working with an ally and trying to take down some other players. And last but not least, we have the boss scenarios. Now, these bring the biggest alteration to the game flow. They'll have you working together with your friends to try and overcome major threats. Threats such as Hades and the Titans, where Hades is walking around the board and trying to link all the corridors of darkness while the Titans wreak havoc across the board and they're trying to overthrow Olympus. Then we've got Sephiroth and the Wandering Behemoth. So Sephiroth will be hunting down all the players, trying to defeat everyone, while the Wandering Titan just is a hazard running through the board, destroying anything running into its path. We've got the Dark Figure and Demon Tide, where the Dark Figure is wandering around the corridors of darkness to release Heartless, while Demon Tide is swallowing Heartless and getting stronger and stronger. Finally, we've got an all-out battle against Dark Figure, Demon Tide, and Heartless everywhere, trying to overcome the Demon Swarm. In these modes, sometimes you'll have a player who's going to be playing Hades and the Titans or the Wandering Behemoth and Sephiroth, so they're playing against everyone else. Or in other times, we've got autoplay bosses, so the Dark Figure and Demon Tide they are autoplay. So they will run themselves based on an algorithm, and then you can just play with your friends. So it can vary from just 2 players up to like a 5-player game. So these change things up a lot. But that's it for like the major game mechanics. Next, let's jump on in to how you can make this for yourself and enjoy the magic. Now, we're finally up to the build section, where we're going to go through how you can make this for yourself so you can play it with your friends. The whole point of this is so that you don't have to spend 200 hours being madly obsessed with a single project just to get the most out of this game. No, hopefully for you, it's just going to be a weekend. So let's start with, what do you need? Firstly, you're going to need a paper guillotine, one of these bad boys. You're going to need a 15 or 20 millimeter hole punch. You're going to need a corner cutter. You're going to need some scissors, some clear sticky tape, some cardboard, relatively thin, not too thick, but decently strong. You're going to want a pin and some tie wires, so the things that are used to like hold toys into their boxes, you might remember from when you were kids. You're going to need access to a print shop, so like an Officeworks or your country's equivalent, and the resources provided in the Discord. And finally, you're going to need that free weekend to tackle this project. Okay, now let's go in step by step what you're going to need to do to make it. So firstly, you're going to go to Discord and you're going to go to the resources channel and download the print files folder. The files are named with the print parameters that it is essential to print them with. Then you're going to save those to your USB and head over to your local print shop to have them printed in accordance with the parameters. I strongly recommend you do this in person, as talking through with the worker about the parameters and their importance and double checking with them is essential to make sure the print is done right. If they're done wrong, the cards may come out the wrong size, meaning they won't shuffle normally, or your front and backs may not be aligned, which may also ruin the cards. Okay, then we're going to go into a few notes about this section. So firstly, I think you should print the board print first. It's going to be A1, so it's going to take the longest. Now, there's a couple of details about this that are important. I've got a rough surface, hard wearing mat that came with an adhesive back, so I could just stick mine down straight onto the old board. Otherwise, you get one without an adhesive back, and you can just use a glue stick and just make sure you get your alignment right. If you're not sure, talk to the staff members about what you're doing with it and find out what they recommend for a strong material, because that's what you want, something hard wearing. Now, if you find a staff member who's happy to do 300 GSM print double-sided, that's great. I've done it many times. I've never had a problem. But sometimes the staff workers are afraid of it jamming and they won't do it. They'll want to put it through one side at a time. If that's the case, make sure they center it in the print tray both times. If it goes too far to one side or on either go, the front or the back may not be properly aligned. I have shrunk the back and created a little bit more black space to give us a bit of wiggle room, but it's better to just make sure that they get it aligned. Finally, for when you're printing them, when the first prints come out, you're going to want to grab a ruler and measure the cards. Specifically, you're going to want to measure the distance between the guidelines, and that's going to tell you the sizes of the cards. For the small cards, you want 88 by 56 millimeters, and for the large cards, you want 127 by 99 millimeters. Now that is 2 millimeters less on the height side, and the reason for that is just to make them fit within the printed page more effectively and make sure we don't run into any issues in the dead zone on the page when you put it through a printer. If they come out wrong, it's likely that a checkbox was selected for fit within page borders, or maybe actual size wasn't selected. So just make sure that that's the case. Again, all the parameters are on the print files. Next up, you're going to head on home and craft. This is the most time-consuming part of the project, so buckle up and get stuck into it. Get some beats going, maybe tackle it with a friend and make it a more enjoyable experience. You're going to want to start with the small cards, and you'll grab your printed sheet. Yours won't look like this. I've changed it up so that you get one more card per printed page. But you'll make your cuts along with the guidelines, not in alignment with the paper, because sometimes the print is skew on the page, but making sure that you're cutting along the guidelines. And then that way you'll make sure you get the correct cuts for the size of the cards. Then, having mastered that, you'll then go on and tackle the bigger cards with the exact same technique. Next up is corner cutting. Now, you're going to want to use 4 millimeters if you can find it, but anywhere up to 7 millimeters is fine. And it's a lot of work. You'll be cutting a heck of a lot of corners, but it is worth it. It does make the look and feel of the cards much better and make a more uniform feel for your deck. So grab yourself a wine and sit there and just punch this button for a couple of hours and you'll be able to get through it. Okay, next up is the stat icons for the keyblades to give keyblade stats. I just cut it out with scissors and glued them straight onto these. And then for Trinities, I just wrote it on the back. If you aren't comfortable actually permanently editing, you can always just use sticky notes and write it on that way to separate the deck out. Next up is the icon sheet. So you're going to want to fold it, not along the white line that's in the middle that separates the two types of icons, but you're going to want to fold it landscape, so along the guideline that makes sure that the icons are the same front and back. So you fold it along there, then you glue it. You might want to use a book or something to weigh it down. Then once it's down, you can use your 20mm hole punch to punch out the tokens. 15 will work just fine as well, and cut out all the tokens. Next up, we're going to go into the deck, and we're going to remove all of the duplicates. So all the same cards that we have made, you'll go through and pull those out. And then for the Heartless cards, I'm going to pop up on screen right now the list and the numbers of the different Heartless cards. Make sure your deck has that many and pull out any extras. Okay, now we're up to sticking the board down. So this is your big A1 map sheet. So you're going to grab the original board and take note of all of the points that it folds on. This is going to be important for later. Okay, flip your game board upside down so that the back is showing. And that's where you're going to stick our new map. So on the other side will be the original map, and on this side is our map. Get your alignment correct. This is imperative. And then begin sticking it down. You might want to grab a ruler to make sure you can remove any bubbles as you work your way and stick the whole board down. Next up, and this is where the fold points are important. I'll pop up on screen now where I made all of my cut points. Double check it against yours to make sure that the fold points are correct. And grab yourself a Stanley knife. Poke the blade out just 1 millimeter, so just a tiny little bit. Not enough to go all the way through the cardboard of this map. Okay, then you're going to want to put a cut in our printed sheet, so not the original map. You will cut along the fold lines in our printed sheet. The original map was made strong enough to handle the folding and hold the whole board together, so we don't want to cut that. Your cut will only go through ours and not through it. And then once you've made those cuts and it can fold in the original way that the original board folded, grab your sticky tape and wrap it around all of the fold points, all of the points where we cut. That way it'll protect our new map board and ensure that no damage comes to it over time. Okay, next up we've got a couple of optional builds, things that can just add to the game a little bit or make things flow a bit more smoothly. So first up, you might want extra dials for your bosses or other players. And so you can just grab a bit of cardboard, stick down your printed dial sheet, and then just start cutting out the dials and the dial stat boards. Then you're going to want to grab the dials, place them on the stat boards in the correct locations, stick a pin through the middle, feed your tie wire through the hole that you just created, put a twist on each end, and then the dial should still spin around on its spot and you can use it as an extra dial. You will have also noticed throughout the video that we have these beautifully painted miniatures that me and my friends put a lot of hours into making, and it was a big job, but yeah, you can tell what massive nerds we are. We're really stoked with them and they turned out super nice. We just used your standard miniatures acrylic paint, so the stuff that you use for like Warhammer miniature painting. With that, we bought cheap stuff and it meant the light colors were pretty grainy and hard to paint with. You can mix it with a little bit of water and give it a good mix and make it a little bit better, but perhaps more expensive paints will actually help to make that an easier painting experience. We made it work anyway, and then you'll want to grab some clear gloss coat spray paint and spray paint over your miniatures. That will make sure that the paint job is protected, and ours has lasted a really long time with no damage to the paint job, which is, yeah, we're really pleased with that. Finally, you will have noticed that we've got a few 3D printed figures as well. So I was lucky enough to have access to a color 3D printer, and we printed a few extra figurines in color. The models are included in the download files that you have access to. So if you've got access to a 3D printer, color or not, an FDM single color print will do just fine. You'll still get a cool figurine like this that you can use as your bosses. If you don't have access to a 3D printer, then no worries. You can just use spare figurines that you've got to represent other bosses and other characters. That pretty much sums up the changes in Kingdom Hearts Talisman Dusk to Dawn expansion. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I know it's been awesome making it and actually getting to share this huge project that I've undertaken. And I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are interested, jump into the Discord, grab the download files. It's all free. I just want to share it with other people, build it with some friends and have a game. And I'd love to hear what you think. Anyway, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Goodbye.